So in this video, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on Disney's Jungle Cruise. Now, this is another attempt by Disney to try and make another movie out of one of their Disneyland rides. They've obviously done it before. Of course, they found great success with Pirates of the Caribbean, where they made a great blockbuster franchise out of that ride. But there's also been stuff that hasn't done so great. There was the Haunted Mansion, which I didn't think was actually awful, but it didn't do well. There was the Country Bears, which was awful. And then there was Tomorrowland, which was just yuck. I don't even know what that was. This movie, Jungle Cruise, opts for more of the Pirates of the Caribbean approach, with its production value, its blockbuster approach, and the big name stars that got to star in it, with Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt. Now, it should be noted that Jungle Cruise, Disneyland's Jungle Cruise, is a ride with no real story to it. You know, if you've ever been on the ride, all it is a 7 or 8 minute boat ride on a dirty ass river, looking at some fake animals while listening to some corny jokes by the skipper.
Now, folks, we're just passing through the Temple of the Forbidden Eye. We're currently, Professor Jones is searching for the world's greatest treasure. But little does he know, folks, the world's greatest treasure is standing right here. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Great to see all of you guys. Oh, my goodness.
You know, honestly, the ride is past its time. It was built when Disneyland was built in 1955, and that's really the only reason it's still around, just because Walt had a hand in building it. Otherwise, they would have gotten rid of it a long time ago. This movie gives the ride just a whole sort of big story, a grand story, where it's a treasure hunt with Emily Blunt's character Lily hiring Dwayne Johnson's character Frank to find a tree with the power to heal. So they go on sort of like a jungle cruise to sort of find it, and along the way they're chased by several parties of interest. Now, the foundation of this movie was primarily built by borrowing from two popular franchises, and that's Pirates of the Caribbean and Indiana Jones. You know, there's a grandness to the look of the film and some of the CGI set pieces that were seen in the first three Pirates of the Caribbean movies, while the action is very Indiana Jones inspired, with its whimsy and how some of the set pieces play out. You know, it's a nice formula to follow, because those first three Pirates movies and those first three Indiana Jones movies showed how to get the most out of their respective genres and make really entertaining adventure flicks. It should be noted, though, that very little of this film has anything to do with the ride. You know, they do pay tribute to the ride in the opening segment with Frank's character acting as the real skipper that you would see on the Jungle Cruise ride. But after that, the movie could have been named anything, as it has very little to do with the actual Disney ride. You know, there's no fake animals. There's no like seeing like people run up like a pole hiding from rhinoceroses. Nothing like that. It was a little disappointing to see them not pay more tribute to the ride in the actual movie based on the ride. Regardless, though, I thought the movie was actually doing great for the first 2/3. You know, it had a nice sort of adventure feel. There was great whimsy. There was some romanticism to the film. Some of the character dynamics were playing out quite nicely. I thought the movie was actually doing great for those first 2/3. But then a twist was introduced that changed the way that we thought about the story and the way that we felt about one of the characters. In all honesty, the twist kind of ruined the fun dynamic the movie had going for me, and it was really just a big like, really? That's what you're going to do here? And then it actually began to mimic the Pirates films in a bad way, where the adventure story gets bogged down in too much backstory and a story that overall gets a little convoluted, as seen with the Pirates films, particularly Pirates 2 and 3. You know, it's in this section actually that we also see the Pirates films mimic the most, with the special effects scene on the film's primarily opposition, mimicking the various cursed pirates that we saw in the Pirates films. You know, there was Barbossa's skeleton crew in part 1, there was Davy Jones' fisherman crew in parts 2 and 3, and there was Salazar's cursed crew in parts 5. The effects on the cursed guys in this film were actually pretty cool. It's probably the thing I enjoyed most about the film's final act. While I did have issues with the film's final like 20%, I still found it overall to be a pretty entertaining ride, in large part to The Rock and Emily Blunt. You know, they were fun leads, they're pros at this kind of stuff, they had nice chemistry, and they were fun characters to follow on this adventure quest. Overall, it made for sort of like a fun blockbuster to follow, where you had good leads, great production value, fun set pieces. Like I said, I wish that final segment was kind of rewritten, just because that dynamic kind of ruined what the movie had going for it, but overall, it didn't ruin the movie to where I didn't enjoy it. I would end up giving it a 7 out of 10. I would have given it like an 8 or maybe an 8.5 for those first 2/3, but that final portion sort of dropped the movie a point for me. But overall, I would still recommend it if you thought the trailers looked interesting to you. Next, I would like to see them do the Matterhorn maybe. I think you could make sort of a cool action film out of that. Or maybe if you wanted to go really twisted, maybe do sort of a horror film based on It's a Small World. Those are just some ideas I have right there. But that'll do it for this review. My thoughts on The Jungle Book. If you made it to the end, The Jungle Book, my review of The Jungle Cruise. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching.
Yesterday, that free had no land. Now it has 20. Have you heard about the ones on the secrets about technologies and the bird watcher, everyone? No? Well, it's kind of a long story, but you get the point in the end, right?